Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Dad Talk. Let me get this post off of there. There you are. Hey, guys, thank you so much. It is Thanksgiving week. We are continuing on with our call-in show. I've got a ton of voicemails from you guys. We're going to try to go through as many as we can today. If you would like to talk to us, maybe you got a question, comment, you want to vent, give us a call, 762-441-0281. Again, that's 762-441-0281. The number is going at the bottom of the screen if you didn't catch that. We want to hear from you guys. I want to bring a guest on today, and I just want to say, for all of the guests that's been on in the past week, you have been amazing. Dwayne Moore, Jeff Morgan, Dr. Brooks McKenzie, man, he tore it up. These have been some amazing, amazing speakers. And these are the guys behind the movement that maybe people don't see as much, but they do a lot of work and they spend countless hours talking to other parents, letting them know, hey, I went through this too. If I could have done it different, this is what I would do. Or sometimes they're just a listening ear to these guys. And I got somebody like that today that I want to show you. So at this point in time, I'm going to bring him on, Mr. Terrence Champagne. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Eric. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, man. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, Taryn. And I got some more questions for you, but just give us a brief overview of how you got into this movement and why you fight in this movement.
All right. So for everybody, my name is Terrence Champagne, and I'm based out of Austin, Texas. I've been in this movement for about the past 7 years. Just like most other people, I went through a divorce, and then I didn't have custody of my son, or I was put on what was called the expanded standard possession order in Texas. And that rubbed me the wrong way. I figured when my son's mother and I separated that I would get 50-50, and then I'm thrust into this system where basically I'm a visitor in my son's life. And that was not anything I ever wanted to be. So naturally, something didn't pass the sniff test, and I started looking around and looking online and reading a bunch and found that this was actually far more common than I realized. And I decided I wanted to help change what was going on. And here I am 7 years later. I do have equal custody and no child support regarding my son. His mother supports him when he's with her, and I support him when he's with me. And I will say, once we achieved that, our working relationship as co-parents was phenomenally better than it was before.
Awesome, brother. I love getting, some updates like that. Unfortunately, it took the battle to get it to where it is now. Let me ask you, did you have any idea of what the family courts were like or how it was structured before you got into it?
Oh, of course not. I had no idea. Nobody, my parents have been married, and they've been married since before I was born. And, that's what I knew growing up. Two parents who love each other, work together, and set a really good role model for their children.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I know we're all here and we're bonded by this family law battle, this corruption in court. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know about it until they're going through it. So when we can get with other advocates, it's like somebody understands what I'm going through. I love it when we have these rallies or these outings, because most of the time people don't want to leave. It's like, finally, I got somebody listening to me that understands what I'm going through. And that's such a beautiful thing. But really quick, before we get back into the family law part, I had a lot of the UFC fighters on here, man. One of my first shows was actually a father out of Texas that won a very big fight like a week ago, Mr. Chris El Guapo Gutierrez. He was an alienated parent as well, and he's starting to make his way up the ranks. Guys, if you didn't see that knockout that he did on Frankie Edgar, oh my God. Did you see it, Taryn?
I didn't, but I'm going to be looking for clips on YouTube right after this.
Oh man, it was crazy to see. You know, when Chris first came on here, he was kind of like on the lower card, didn't make a lot of them, but I've just watched him keep stepping up. And I heard Rogan tell him the other night he was one of the most underrated fighters in the league. He had this one fight last year where he was doing nothing but leg kicks to this guy. They said it was one of the only matches that they had seen in this way in the UFC. Like the guy's legs was just whelped up, and he finally was like, "No more, I'm done." And yeah, dude, he is climbing his way up the ranks. But one of the reasons I'm mentioning that, like I said, before we get into family law, I want to show you guys a picture. I know you.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I know you didn't know I was going to do this, but I don't get to talk as much to people. But I saw this, and I was like, dude, I see your videos. Dude, you got a lot of talent. Tell us what kind of martial arts is it that you're studying, and how long have you been in it?
Yeah, so I practice Chinese martial arts, also known as Kung Fu or Wushu. I've been practicing since I went to college in 2005, and then now I run a lion dance team. So you think of like Chinese New Year, that big puppet that's kind of on things. People call it a dragon. It's actually lion. But I also teach dragon dance, which is on poles as well. And so that's what I do in my spare time. Actually, that's a really good segue kind of into family law.
It is.
Because when I didn't have custody of my son, I talked with my sifu. Sifu is a Chinese term, which means like teacher father. So you're really close with your instructor. And he basically told me that I kind of got two choices, right? And I don't have custody of my son. He'd actually gone through a divorce and separation. And what he told me was, you got two choices. You can either crawl into a bottle and kind of have self-pity and nothing will happen, or you can take the time that you're away from your child and make it just as important as the time that you're with him. I'd already been practicing for a long time, but it really gave me a sort of escape and a focus that I could work on while I wasn't with my son.
Absolutely. Do talk about the importance of that balance. Because that was something I think a lot of these guys are lacking, and I was one of them. Once I started going through family law troubles or, fighting for my kid, it was all I worked on. And I think to some degree, it was like if I wasn't working on it 24/7, I wasn't doing all I could. And a lot of times I just burnt myself out because I wasn't living life anymore. It was like this was the only thing that had me going. You got to take care of yourself, guys, or you're not going to be able to get through this fight, or you're not going to be able to take care of your child. So seeing that you've got something like that, man, is really amazing. I just wanted to ask, how long have you been doing it?
Since 2005, so 17 years now.
Absolutely. If there's anybody out there that maybe says, you know what, that interests me, tell them some of the importance behind. I mean, you did a little bit, but maybe in promotion a little bit. What has done for you when it comes to this fight?
So one, the biggest thing, right, is it gives me something to do to take my mind off of, the fight. It's all well and good to be very focused on it, but your mind needs a chance to relax. Not only that, but one of the big things in Kung Fu or really any martial art is about controlling your breath. And it really comes in handy when you're coming into court, right? You get everything kind of rises up, you get anxious and nervous, but really if you want to think clearly, move quickly, you got to be able to relax and center yourself and do the Zen thing, man. You got to let it all go away and focus on what you're trying to do there, because if you're tight and nervous, you're not going to move as fast as if you're relaxed.
Absolutely, man. And have I seen correctly? Do you have an Asian wife?
Yeah, my wife, Bebe, she's originally from China. So.
Okay, my wife's Korean. Is what I was
okay.
Okay. Was she born here in America and raised in America?
No, actually, not to get too far off topic, but her and my story is pretty interesting. So she graduated. She was a film student at the University of Texas, and their first project was to do a documentary. So she got here and she heard there was a lion dance team at UT and thought it was very strange that this Chinese cultural art was being practiced at UT. And so she came out, she contacted my team and like, oh, you need to speak with our Sifu Taryn. And she was expecting kind of an old Chinese guy to be teaching it. And then, she met up and saw me. And she also got to see the relationship between my son and I. Ended up focusing her documentary on my son Finley and I and our relationship. It's on Vimeo. It's called Bobby, Babi, and you can kind of see that. But it also contains some of this discussion we're having here, that the martial arts and everything like that was kind of an outlet for me, especially as I was going through custody fights. And now, many years later, that particular fight is over. The overall fight for all the kids is still ongoing. But yeah.
And I think that's an important thing. There was a reason I brought that up. How was that relationship with her? You know, her being from China, how was that different than any relationships you had been in with American women?
Well, that is actually it was a big source of contention between her and I, because the custody system there is very different. Oftentimes the child goes with the parent who has more money. So whoever's got more money, they think, oh, they can go provide for that. To her, and in her experience, she spoke about how a lot of the time there is issues where people won't pay things like child support, and they really don't go after it because it's considered a private issue. Or one parent will take custody of the kid and maybe the other parent gets to see him every once in a while. So to her, it was very different seeing how in the US, you know, you got guys who are fighting desperately to be in their children's lives. And it's just not something that she had ever seen or really encountered over there in China.
Absolutely, man. I figured there was. That's definitely interesting. I noticed, you know, my wife having that traditional Asian upbringing, she was really in that support role. There's not many people that have put up with a guy doing what I'm doing, you know.
Nah.
She believed in me, and she's proud of it. So it was interesting for me to see the difference in somebody with that upbringing versus what we're seeing being pushed on a lot of these women here in America with the feminism. You know, it really is sad. But, you know, getting back into the family law, let me ask you a question. I didn't realize this until I think it was yesterday. I sat down as I was getting guests together, and I said, you know, for the past week, I've had nothing but Texas guys on. I haven't been outside of Texas yet. And as much as I love the state of Texas, I really do, man. You got great barbecue. It's pretty. It's clean. However, you got some of the most messed up family courts I have seen in this country. What's going on in Texas here?
I mean, where to start? So a couple things, right? So we have, so allegedly, right? Allegedly in Texas, there's supposed to not be any discrimination based off of sex, gender, marital status, blah, blah, blah. It's written into the Texas Family Code. However, what we have found based off of data pulls from the Office of the Attorney General, which is the Title 4D agency in the state of Texas, is that 91% of the non-custodial parents in Texas are fathers. That's not, you know, that's just it right there, 91%. So while the law is written to be non-biased, in actuality, it is incredibly biased. And there's not much, you know, that we've been able to do yet other than directly challenging the judges. We working in the legislature. It moved a little bit further last legislative session where the expanded standard possession order came in. But I think a lot of it boils down to a couple things. One, you've got that default possession order that's written into the law, and the judges don't want to be overturned on appeal regarding that. And then also there's this horrible thing called judicial discretion, where basically they can deviate as they see fit because it's in this alleged best interest of the child. Not only that, the judges, and I know, because I was listening to your talk with Dr. McKenzie last night while I was lifting, you got that horrible judicial discretion, or I mean, judicial immunity, right? Where the judges are like, neener, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Report me to the SCJC? Like, they're not going to do anything. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That brings an interesting question, Taryn. What is the best interest of the child?
Well, I mean, the best interest of the child from all the research and studies and speaking with different experts I've found is that the child is raised in an intact home with both mother and father present. That is truly the best interest of the child.
What do you think the best interest of the child? Do we have a definition for it as it pertains to the family courts?
They have shoot. Now you put me on the spot and I'm drawing a blank. But in Texas, Hawley factors. They use a non-exhaustive list in Texas called the Hawley factors, which let me pull up real quick just so I can kind of read off of it. And these are not my opinions, but this is what allegedly they consider in Texas. While that's loading.
And just while you're pulling that up, guys, we talk about this Title 4D, which maybe that'd be my next question for you, Taryn. I'll get you a little prepared for it. Mm-hmm. But there's money made off of how much these guys are paying in child support, right? The state gets some of that money back. That's how they get their operating expenditures. Texas has set records on Title 4D, I'm going to say, for the last 6 or 7 years. They just keep setting records. That means they're making more and more money off of dads getting less time and more being paid in child support. And yes, let's go ahead and preface that with it does happen to moms too. Texas is one of the worst states as it goes with dads. 91% are losing, but yet dads are deadbeats not trying. 91% of the guys that are trying are losing. And that's just a sad reality to that.
Yeah. So let's go real quick to the Hawley factors. And this was just a quick Google on it. So this is what kind of the first one came up. It said the list of what the Hawley factors can include when determining the best interest of the child, the desires of the child, the emotional and physical needs of the child now and in the future, emotional and physical danger of one parent of the child now and in the future, parental abilities of the individual seeking custody, the programs available to assist the parents, the plans, the stability of both parties' homes, any excuses for acts or omissions of a parent. This is a bunch of subjective hogwash, if you ask me. Right?
100%, man.
So basically the factor, and remember, this is a non-exhaustive list. So it could be, maybe, Eric, he's not clean shaven. I don't think kids should be raised by guys who have, facial hair. They should all be clean shaven or whatever nonsense they have in mind. So there's the Hawley factors there. Then they also have further things for like parents seeking primary conservatorship might include the following: which parent will best provide for the child's needs, the parent's plans for the child's short-term and long-term, the parent's ability to cooperate with the other parent, encourage the relationship, and reach shared decisions, geographic proximity, whether one parent is asking to divide the siblings, child's relationship with half and step siblings, recent past conduct. It's really funny, right? If they're like, oh, we're going to consider your ability to cooperate, which I don't think they actually consider. By its very nature, if you're making one other parent a guest in the child's life, that's not cooperation. That's you imposing your will on somebody else. It's quite nonsensical.
Definitely, man. And there's so, I think the system and the problems that we're facing, there's just so many of them, and it's so complicated to tell people the overall problem, whether it's CPS, it's child support, it's the family courts. Guys, we could go on and on and on. I think we need subject matter experts in every one of these fields. But, I'm sure that a lot of people tuning in right now already know what this is. But, Taryn, I think you'll be a great person to explain it. What is Title 4D?
Title 4D is an act of the Social Security Act, which is designed to incentivize the collection of child support. Basically, kind of long story short, back in the 70s or so, right, you had a lot of individuals who were qualifying for social support services such as Medicaid, TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families, food stamps, etc. And the states were losing money on this. So as the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions, the federal government developed the Title 4D of the Social Security Act. And the idea was to incentivize the collection of child support so that these states weren't on the hook for these individuals who are qualifying for social support services. So Title 4D isn't really even about the child support itself, is more of recouping money for these individuals who are on the social support services, which brings a very good question. If they're not receiving Medicaid or anything like that, is there really a need to maximize these Title 4D funds? And it's really quite absurd. If you'd like, I can go into a little more detail on this.
Absolutely.
That I think.
Go ahead, brother.
So one of the things that you need to be aware of is what's known as a state plan amendment. So basically, any sort of state government that is applying and utilizing federal funds have to submit what's called a state plan amendment to the federal government on how they're using these funds. Now, what these state plan amendments serve is a treasure trove of information for individuals looking to understand the Title 4D agency of their state. So, for example, in Texas, which despite me representing the University of Florida, go Gators, I've been a resident of Texas for the past 11 years, and I looked into the state plan amendments that they submitted. And what I learned is that not only are they're collecting a bunch of money and distributing. So they distribute it not only to the counties, but they're also non-county entities that get money. So everybody gets kind of a piece of the pie when it comes to it. And through public information, what we call public information requests in Texas, others may call them FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act, you can learn just kind of where this money is going. So for example, in Texas, right, a county may receive over $1 million in these Title 4D funds dispersed through their Title 4D agency for various things, court cost, for their sheriffs, whatever. In some cases, we found that those Title 4D funds that are dispersed to the counties and some of the smaller counties, those funds almost line up with the judge's supplemental payment that they get from the county. Because here in Texas, your district judges get their state salary, and then they get a little extra from the county. And in those smaller counties, it's pretty darn close to what they get from these Title 4D funds. I think we all need to put on our tinfoil hats and everything like that, but it's kind of weird that they line up so closely. Now, obviously, bigger counties, they can just rake it in hand over fist in these funds. And let me pull something real quick. I think we'll use Harris County, which is where Houston is in Texas. I'll pull how much they got in fiscal year 21. So let me just pull that up real quick.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like these guys are depending on families getting divorced and going through this conflict and getting child support collected. We see in cases there's 50-50. Mom and dad have equal custody, but there has to be somebody paying child support. Does it make sense now? A lot of people say that doesn't make sense. They depend on this money, guys. Family law is just a complete setup. And that's why you asked me. I have gotten very down on politics because we're going to ask people that are creating the problems to give us solutions. They don't want solutions. And they'll tell you that they do. But what it is, they're really in on this together. And they know that if they fight for you, there's going to be somebody down the line that's going to put the roadblock on it, right? So it's virtue signaling.
So back to the point about the money, right? So Harris County in state fiscal year 21, which is where Houston is, got a little over $1.7 million from the Office of the Attorney General in Texas. And that's for various things. They've got court costs for multiple things. They've got their integrated child support system, which basically at each month for every kid on child support in that county, they get a payment amount. They get, sheriff's money, all sorts of stuff. It's quite absurd how much money they get. But to the point about you made about the people being in on it, like the politicians, right? So last legislative session, Victoria Neave, who was the chair of the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee, somehow came up with this idea that she needed to submit, I believe it was 2 bills relating to the administration of Title 4D funds in Texas, and noted in her testimony while laying out the bill, if we don't make these updates, Texas could lose some federal funding. I wonder where she got that idea. It's almost as if, like you said, they actually know what's going on.
They do. And then like the fight for 50-50, there was like 200 parents at that Capitol. I think, what was it, 8 or 9 that showed up to oppose it, which I got to give the sponsor from last year some credit. When he got up there, he said the only opposition we've had today actually came from the lobbyists that were against us, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the whole thing is just a sham, but they got this expanded standard. Am I right? And that's supposed to be like a 45-55 type situation?
It kind of depends on what school district you're living in. I've heard it as more like 40-60. It
40.
moves it in the right direction, which is good. But it doesn't get to 50-50.
You're so close to 50-50, though. Why wouldn't you just go ahead and do that? Does that mean we can still keep that child support right there?
So, man, I really hate this, but a lot of people will talk about it, and I really hate it. Like, because people say like, oh, well, child custody and child support are written in 2 different parts of the family code, which they are. But I mean, let's be honest here. People, men or women, do not like paying child support. If anybody asks me like, you don't want to pay child support, I'm like, no, I don't need to pay somebody else to raise my own son.
Right.
Flat out. I can raise him, when he's with mom. Mom can take care of him. When he's with me, I can take care of him. We're both 2 productive working citizens and stuff like that. And we've got a horrible cultural narrative that basically, 30, 40 years where they've been saying, oh, you don't want to pay child support. You don't want to support your kid. Support comes in more than just money. Being there for your kid at their soccer game or their football game or whatever, like, picking them up after school, going hiking in the mountains or something like that. That's support too. And, support is not just financial.
Maybe I shouldn't say this on screen, but you know what? I think right now politics is just such a big game that I'm going to put it out there. I am waiting next session. This is going to be my bet that when you go for the fight for 50-50, well, we already did expanded standard. We're going to sit on that one for a while and see how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, it's the games that they're willing to play.
Yep.
They're going to do it, and they're going to be like, well, we kind of need to see what goes on, except, you had Dr. McKenzie on the other day noting that we have 50 years of research on what is actually the best interest of the child.
Yep.
But I think it was, last session they had Dr. Fabricius. He testified virtually before the JJFI, and all the members of the JJFI, they gave him his 3 minutes to speak and were screwing around on their phones. And then when he asked if, they had questions like, nah, we got nothing for you, because many of them, their minds were already made up. They were like, nah, we're going to make them go pound sand.
They were just sitting there and trying to get through the testimonies so they could go home at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't believe they really listened to anything. And then there was a comment, Kentucky passed shared parenting. They was one of the first ones. And what was her name? Ramos?
Yes.
I think her name was Ramos. She was like, we've only got one state that's done this, and it's Kentucky. Really? Oh, man, that burnt me up. I was like, seriously? She was like, who is Kentucky? That's when I got up there, I was like, Kentucky is one of the states that everybody should be looking to right now, because they're patent leading the country, and Texas could be doing the same thing, but they're not.
We got the fighters down here.
You definitely do, man. If we had a team like you guys got in Texas across this country, I mean, things would really, really heat up. And I mean, there's so many to name out there. That's why I love coming down there. There is people definitely putting in the work. But guys, I know we've been talking for a minute. We are going to get to these voicemails. I got one question from Mr. Garza for you there, Taryn, right before we get into the voicemails. He said, does the money get distributed evenly, or does the funds collected go back to the county the funds came out of?
So it depends on the contract, right? So as I mentioned, in some of these counties, right, they receive a per child amount. So every month, if you got a child on the rolls, dollar bills coming in. Now, in addition, if there are actions on that case, right? So for example, if that, you already got a child support order, that, and then they start a lawsuit or whatever, the county will get an additional payment. There are additional payments made for, performance measures. So if they are closing the cases within 1 year of starting, you get an additional, like you got to close 70, 80, 90% of those cases in a year. It kind of comes back on the county. So obviously the counties with more kids on the rolls are going to get more of the money. And then the counties that are smaller are going to get less of the money, but they're all getting money. And it's all based on those performance measures. And once again, for those of you in other states, pull your state plan amendments for child support. They're all due to the office, the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level. Pull the state plan and start reading it, and then do more public info requests based off of that, because that knowledge is power. We that 91% of non-custodial parents being dads, that came from a public information request to the Office of the Attorney General. Otherwise, we're like, well, I think it's biased. Well, it is, but you don't have numbers to back you up. It's just a feeling, right? And really, we should be presenting facts and evidence.
And we have those facts on our side.
Mm-hmm.
Just got to get them, guys. So, I appreciate that. All right, guys, we're going to get into these voicemails. Please do me a favor real quick. If you're watching this, please make sure to do a few things: like, share, and subscribe. One, so you know when we're going live, because I'm really enjoying being able to talk to you guys, hear what you got to say. And we want to make sure this content's getting out there. Like and share, because the more that you do that, the more people it goes out to. It's just the way that Facebook works. But get some more of those voicemails into us. If I don't get to them today, we will tomorrow. 762-441-0281. Again, that's 762-441-0281. We're going to go to our first caller here.
Hey guys, this is Chad from Oklahoma. Unfortunately, or I should say fortunately for me, I'm in a situation where my marriage is going well. We've been on the rocks a couple of times, but we've been together 14 years. We've been married 14 years, been together 18. I have 2 boys of my own. I have a 17-year-old. I also have a 6-year-old. And I just wanted to say one thing about me and my wife is that she knows I care way too much about these kids. If we ever did go through divorce, there would never need to be a lawyer situation. She knows I would take care of my kids. There would be no custody battle. There'd be none of that, because she would never take those kids away from me. And it just saddens my heart to see some of these women and what they're actually doing. They're using their kids as a war tactic, like you guys were getting at. It just makes me sick, man. If you guys are going through any of that, I just want to take a minute and say I'm sorry, and I hope you guys find a way out of it. God bless.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. One of the things, I'm not saying this is your particular case, but I don't think any of us got with the people we did initially thinking that they could do something like this. It's you could be with somebody 10 years and think you know them, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're living with a stranger. And then when that breaks apart and the battle starts fueling up, you think, oh, no, we'll be able to do this amicable. Oh, we've both been paying on this house for 10 years. Who's going to get the house? All right. We've both been taking care of the kids. Who's going to get the kids? We've both been paying on the cars. And so like that little stuff right there just starts making it break apart. I think, one of the saddest things that I see, Taryn, is when a family member dies, and then a family that should be coming together and helping each other starts fussing over who's going to get what. Those little things right there, and money, when it gets in there, even the most perfect of relationships have went south. And then, I hate to say this. I mean, it can happen with guys too, but a lot of women are getting their, with their friends, and they get in their ear, oh, you need to go get the attorney, or you need to do this. You think it's going to be this way. And unfortunately, I think that promotes a lot of this battle, but it doesn't have to be a war. I would say for anybody, if you're in one of those relationships and it starts to go south and you say, hey, we don't love each other anymore, but we want to do this, the right way, sit down, come together for your child and get a plan. And then if you can get that wrote up, see if you can get it signed off in court, because once you go there, they are there to increase conflict, because conflict increases billable hours. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is, man. Taryn, what's some of your thoughts on that call?
I mean, one, it's nice to hear some positive news, like a good positive phone call. Like, you hear so much negativity, and thanks Chad for calling, leaving that. That's a nice positive message. I think the big thing is like you were saying, Eric, if you can sit down and have that conversation, you may not come out with everything you want, but you'll come out with a lot more if you come to an agreement than if you let attorneys kind of carve you up. In my case, right, my son's mother was represented by an attorney, and once I broke that attorney, I'm going to use the term broke that attorney because she ran scared. After a while, my son's mother was no longer as hostile. It took about a couple months after that for us to come to an agreement, but she wasn't hostile because she didn't have that, that devil on the shoulder speaking into her ear, telling her all these things, all this nonsense, stuff like that. And those attorneys, they get in your ear and, oh, you can get this, you can get that. And really the attorney's like, oh, you can get this and then give it to me because I'm going to, you've signed a Faustian bargain with me.
Yep.
But keep that relationship positive, Chad, man. That's some good stuff. That's best for your kids, mom and dad together.
And you know what? Nothing would make me happier if there's some of those guys out there that's got those relationships abused. Let's get some more of those calls. Nice to listen to. It really is, man. It's dad talk for a reason. I appreciate you for supporting us. And even though you're not going through it, acknowledging the fight that a lot of these guys are going through. It definitely means a lot. All right, guys, we're going to get on to our second caller.
Yes, this is Homer Irvin. I'm from the state of Kentucky, and what I'm calling about, I'm the only biological parent living, and I fell sick after my wife's funeral, and while I was in ICU, the aunt of my kids took my kids without my permission, so I had to check out to go find my kids, and I went to look for them, and I called the police department in the state of Kentucky, in Millsboro, Kentucky, and the sheriff's department, the courts, and I even went as far as going to Claiborne County, Tennessee, called the sheriff's department and all them, and I can't get no help, so I wrote the governor, the attorney general's office, and the Congress, and nobody has returned my calls, and I'm an only single biological parent, and I'm trying to get my kids home, man. I'm trying to get help. And I can't afford an attorney or interstate attorney or whatever they want to call them. And I needed advice, and hopefully somebody can reach out and give me advice about it. And I hope and pray that I can get my kids home because I'm the only biological parent living. Thank you.
Oh, man, I can hear the emotion in the voice. I am so sorry. Real quick, though, let me just say, and I know you guys know this already, but obviously we have to do this. Neither of us are attorneys. I don't think either of us want to be at all. We don't want to join that club, but we are two fathers that have been through this system and talked to many parents that are going through it. So we know a little bit about it. Taryn, when you hear his call, what was going through your mind?
So interference with child custody, right? So we actually have a very large movement in Texas, Texas 2503. There's a penal code in Texas that deals with interference with child custody. I can't speak for the law in Kentucky, but in Texas, withholding a child, when a parent has custody of that child, is a state jail felony. Now it's hard to get enforced, but the group Texas 2503 Interference with Child Custody has a wealth of information. It was founded by George Saldana. Reach out to that group. They may have some contacts in Kentucky that may be able to help with this. A couple things: if there is a law regarding interference with child custody in Kentucky and the police refuse to take a report or refuse to do any action, you can ask for a child a wellness check by the police. And if they're refusing to do this, I know you can ask for them to go speak with internal affairs so you can make a report that they are basically not doing their job. If there is that law in Kentucky, which I imagine there would be, and if they're not doing that, that will potentially prevent them from getting getting promotions down the line if they have so many internal affairs complaints. And you have to apply that pressure because eventually they will start standing up. or they will start paying attention and listening. If you are getting those internal affairs complaints and they're not getting promoted, or if you make enough public noise regarding this, they will stand up and listen. I know in Texas, there was also a case relating to a non-biological parent having custody of a child. And they fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court here in Texas, the Chris Clay case. So that's not my specialty, interference with child custody. I'm very fortunate that I've only had to deal with it once, but I would reach out to Texas 2503. They may be able to put you in contact with someone in Kentucky, and you really need to read the law, and you need to point it out to these police officers. A lot of, at least in Texas, once again, this is Texas focused because that's where I'm at. They'll tell you, child custody is a civil matter. Well, it's not. It's written in the penal code. So if the police are selectively choosing which laws to enforce, I mean, ask them which other laws do you refuse to enforce. So yeah, I would get that research and try and find those people that can help you in Kentucky, because there are certainly other people who've gone through what you've been through, and the internet is a beautiful place. It's also a scary place. Be careful if you're on Reddit, but it's a really great place because you can meet a lot of fantastic people who can help you out with these things, these situations you may be in.
Absolutely. And, sometimes I think it's just good to be able to vent. What I would ask, if there's any parents that are on here, and I mean, this is an emotional thing, but people are watching this too, and some of them might not understand what you're going through. So try to keep that anger at bay. I mean, I see it every day, and that could run off some of the people from the outside. We know what it is you're going through. And I do want to promote, we got the Dad Talk Today support group. It's 100% free. There's right at 25,000 members in there now, Taryn, and it's parents just like you guys that are going through these issues. It's a safe place to vent. It's private. So if you haven't joined there, please get that in there. And I believe that would also be good for you there, Homer. We are going to get sorry, I am getting lots of phone calls this morning. For some reason, my phone is hooked up to my computer, and I'm being informed that I have a water leak. So today's episode might get cut a little short, guys. I'm going to have to get on one more call, and I hate to do that to you, but water's not as expensive as gasoline right now, but I don't know how long it's been doing that. So let me see. I hope I didn't do this.
Yes.
Okay, that was the same call. All right, here is our next caller.
Hey, Eric, this is Rogers Ramirez from New Egypt, New Jersey. And I want to tell you and the whole Dad Talk Today crew, thank you so much for you guys coming up. I think it was last year when you guys came up here to New Egypt and came to the Fight House, and it was really wonderful to have you represent the interests of fathers and alienated children who are going through this just catastrophe of a reality here in the U.S. and around the world. But I just wanted to give you a personal message and tell you thank you very much for your efforts. And I'm glad you're doing this new segment because I think it works really, really well. It's very dynamic. And I actually look forward to hearing everybody. I don't have any question, really, just a comment and an appreciation is what I wanted to tell you. Thank you so much from New Egypt, brother. You guys keep trucking. Bye now.
Hey, I appreciate that, Roger. So Taryn, I actually, he runs a fight house up in Egypt, New Jersey, and a few alienated parents that go there, and they're into jiu-jitsu and everything, and they actually do MMA. And in his little town, one of the gubernatorial candidates that they had there in New Jersey that was not aware of family law was coming down there to talk to everybody in the town and was going to be hosting it there. So they wanted me there to interview him. So I went from Georgia all the way to New Jersey, and we were there when that gubernatorial candidate came, and right there in the middle of the town, we interviewed him about family law questions, and there was several people around that had questions for him. That was really cool, man, because me and that candidate, he didn't win, unfortunately, but we have hit it off, and I know he's running for other offices, and through him, I've met other people that we continue to echo what's going on. guys, that's something very important too. Every once in a while, you might meet somebody that's not familiar with our issues, but if they sit down and talk to you, that's what matters, right? It's our duty to educate them. And one thing I would say to you when we talk about emotions, a lot of times we would just want to rattle everything on off about our case, or finally somebody's listening. It's this, and this. Nobody can consume that all at once, right? Find out ways of giving questions. And something somebody taught me early on: tell your story through their eyes. Ask them the questions. Imagine you're a father that is going through this, and then that forces them to think, well, what if this was happening to me? But that was a really cool thing. I appreciate the opportunity from Rogers for that. I'm going to get one more call in here, though, Taryn, because I wanted to make sure we're getting to these guys. So this will be the last call of the day. If anybody has any more for us, if we don't get to it today, we'll get to it tomorrow. 762-441-0281.
Hey, Eric, this is Pat from the corrupt state of Illinois in the even more corrupt city of Chicago. I was your very, very first caller last week. I have a comment and I guess a question. I also want to warn parents out there, and this goes for dads, moms, everything. The parental alienation, and quote unquote, is being flipped on its ear now with this trans movement. I'm seeing it with my own case. 2 years I've been fighting parental alienation from day one. They took my daughter from me, and for 3 months I did not see my child because of parental alienation. Once a gal got involved and once we started going through the procedure in court, they came to me and said, your daughter's a boy. You don't accept this child as a boy. You're homophobic, racist, and transphobic. And this is now the new thing. I've been fighting this now for 2 years. 2 years I've spoken to the gal for 6 minutes on the telephone. Never returns my phone calls, never returns my text messages. Now he's suing me for $20,000, which is great. And the 604B evaluation, same thing. I'm a transphobic homophobe because I don't use the correct pronouns. So be careful out there. They took that 3 months where they took my daughter from me and brainwashed her to the point where she tells the gal, I don't want to see my dad. He's homophobic. He's racist. My back's against the wall. I'm out of money. Yeah, you can't fight anymore. Once that hits, this is dangerous. They don't care about your values. You could be a good Christian. You could be a good Muslim. You could be a good, name the religion. Fill in the blank here. It doesn't matter. If you do not go along with that agenda, they will take your child away. I've seen it happen to women and men. I don't know if you'll use this because I was your first caller before and you've used me on here before, but if you do, that's just a warning. And God, what are we going to do about this? It's like the magic $1 million question. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Pat, I remember your call last week, and then I remember getting this call yesterday, and I said, I definitely want to play it. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer before we get into it. Taryn, we both have a mutual friend down there in Texas that I think is one of the highlight reels for this. He was one of the first ones. And because of being one of the first ones, this was a worldwide case. And you got people on both sides of the fence. The thing that boggles my mind is how many people actually support it. But when it comes to advocacy groups like ours, let's just be honest, Facebook, YouTube, we all have, these platforms, and that is, like it or not, it is the strongest way to get our voice out there. Okay. But this issue scares me more than just about any issue out there, because the money that is going to be involved, because all the specialists and everything, I've said it and I'll say it again, it is the next big thing about the hit family law. Since Jeff Younger, I have more and more cases every single day that this is going on. I mean, there's even somebody, I'll keep it anonymous. There's somebody in the community that does a show, sort of like this. Nobody knows it. He is going through it right now. And the problem is, if you talk about it, because of the PC culture that we have right now, political correctness and cancel culture, you can lose your platform.
Yeah, better be careful, Eric. I mean,
I know that's what I'm saying. So
I'm waiting for the feed to be cut right now.
I mean, and it could, it's you're not allowed to talk about it. So if you're a parent and you have a serious concern, and let's be honest, there is lots of concerns about this. I believe that the trans community has one of the biggest suicide rates out of anybody. So these are people saying that they're not happy, but then they go and do this, and then obviously they're committing suicide. We're putting chemicals in the body to try to do a certain thing. And again, I'm talking about it as good as I can, guys, and I hope everybody understands what I'm talking about. Man, dude, I mean, you have a genuine concern. Why is my child not happy with who they are? Why are so many people unhappy with who they are? In the younger case, there's video of little James saying, I want to be a boy, but mama wants me to be a girl, from what I've heard. And then when going back to the money, I think it was a year ago. I have no idea what it's up to now. I think Jeff's trying to fight it as much as he can by himself. But at one point in time, he was up to $1.1 million trying to save his son from this transition. Now think about that, guys. $1.1 million. And I'll just speak on that particular case. Then they give him supervised visitations, and he didn't take them. And that's going to be the one thing that they're going to try to use against Younger, and he knows it. Oh, you didn't go to the visitation. He said, I am not showing up and seeing my son this way. He refused. Well, now they have granted the rights for his son to move with the mom to California, where this is a lot more lenient for that kind of stuff. So, what do we do about this, Taryn? Maybe you got some ideas that I haven't thought of.
So, right. So, and this, about this specific issue, right, or really any issue in family court, this applies to all of them. Record every single hearing, every interaction you have with them, and publish it online. Flat out. People cannot believe how or why this is happening. Why? Because they can't see it with their own eyes. I don't care what the law says. And in fact, I've asked judges, why can't we record it? Tell me the law. They cannot. They're like, oh, I'm certain it's in there. I can't name the law. Record everything. Because if you don't record it, it's like it didn't exist. Those transcripts are thousands and thousands of dollars to get and are worthless. They convey none of the emotion. None. If a judge rolls their eyes at you or whatever, record it. Figure out a way to record everything. Publish it online. Because otherwise, people cannot believe what is happening. Straight up.
Yeah, man, and that's the thing. I mean, like Jeff's, like I said, I think was one of the first ones that happened. So this just got so much exposure. I think at one point in time, Ted Cruz even stepped in and helped Jeff regain custody, and then it got flipped back around and went back. And mom's from what I understand, a pediatrician.
Yeah, I believe so. And with that, right, like if Jeff had not been so vocal about this, now it's at the point where they're trying to punish him, but him speaking out about it is what needed to be done. And it's the only reason why, he's been able to fight so hard and he had custody regarding this.
I do have to agree. Civil disobedience. Jeff had a clause on there where he wasn't allowed to talk about it. What's it called? It's slipping my mind, where he's not allowed to talk.
Oh, a gag order.
Yeah. Jeff had a gag order, and they told him he wasn't allowed to talk about it. He didn't let that stop him. He talked about it anyway. One of the first places he came was Dad Talk. And I remember sitting in on that, Taryn, doing the court watching, and here comes our episode in the courtroom. And he was like, I'm not being quiet on this. So, but that's exactly what they try to tell you. This is what we're going to do, and you're not going to be allowed to touch it. And guys, every time we just lay back and run away from the issues, it's going to get that much worse. This is where it's gotten to from that. Our people need to be way more proactive and just keep your eyes on that situation. And I wish I had better advice for you on that one. Just know that you are not alone. I'm hearing it more every single day. I mean, some of the genuine concerns, like I said, look into the suicide rates, like look into the health effects that if I go and do this, these chemicals go in, and research, as Dr. Brooks McKenzie said, take opinion out of it. Go give them the research, because I'm going to tell you, the research would back up your point of view, I do believe.
There's and I don't know if it's everywhere. This is in Texas. There's a thing called a Daubert challenge, or Daubert, maybe if you're not from Texas, where basically you challenge the expert on the stand. If they're going to present something, you need to be able to challenge their credentials, their validity. And for example, if they're saying, well, I did this test that can, tell that you're whatever, that the kid's, emotionally disturbed or whatever, ask to see the raw data, have a second expert review it, see if it's a manualized data. Like Dr. McKenzie always says, he only gives the research. He doesn't give his personal opinions. Is this report that this expert is giving, is it based in science, or is it based, on your own personal opinion? And once again, publish everything. Who cares? I mean, you got to have some balls to steal, right? If you're willing to go out there and fight in the public eye, but they're going to take your kid. They want to take your kid, and you shouldn't go down silent. You need to go down swinging. I'll tell you what, I've got equal custody now, but I wouldn't have gotten it if I had played by the rules that that people told me to play by. My hearings are out there. Several of my hearings out there in YouTube. You can watch them. Am I the smartest, most clever? Am I the most eloquent? No, but they're out there, and you will listen. And it terrified those attorneys and judges that it was out there, that their incompetence and their awfulness was being exposed to the public. And that is, we are to serve as a check on the judiciary and the attorneys. And the only way we can do that is if we expose them for what they do.
Absolutely, man. Pat commented down there. He said, I have documented everything and no one wants to look at it. In many ways, this kind of goes back, I think, to how many people are facing false allegations. And because the nature of the allegations, people say, we're going to err on the side of caution because we don't want to get no blowback from it, right? This is going to be one of those politically incorrect topics that the people that are supposed to be giving you some type of justice is like, I'm going to step back from this one. And that's so sad. You're supposed to be in there to protect children. You're supposed to be in there to do the right thing. This is where we're supposed to go to get justice. And because you're afraid of career suicide or whatever, you won't stick up for these kids. You're allowing this type of stuff to happen to the kids. Our system, Taryn, is so broken. It disgusts me. It really does, man.
There's no due process really in civil court. And, I don't know the exact steps, but hey, if there are false accusations there, tell them, bring it to criminal court. Really, if you are a child abuser, you shouldn't be going through the civil process. Dare them. Let's go to criminal court where you actually have to prove things.
Absolutely, man. Dude, I have enjoyed this so much doing this today. We'll have to get you back on here. Taryn, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you, they wanted to talk to you, pick your head about something, how could they get in touch with you?
I mean, the stuff about picking my head, just search my videos of me on YouTube. There's videos of me eviscerating attorney's fees, which I think everybody should kind of take a look at. You can find me. I generally don't add people that I haven't met in person. Just because most of my Facebook is on that, but you can reach out, and I do respond to messages on Facebook usually. So
there you go, guys. I appreciate it again, guys. Get in those voicemails. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, and there will be a replay of this show at 8:00 p.m. Eastern tonight. 762-441-0281. Again, that's 762-441-0281. Hey, Taryn. Thanks, brother, and keep fighting the fight down there, man. I'm rooting for you guys in Texas.
Thank you, and I hope your water's okay. You go take care of that.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Love you. Hey everybody, Eric Carroll here. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of Dad Talk Today. While we fight for you, we would ask for you to please help fight for us. Like, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell so you get notifications every time we go live. There's also Super Chats, patreon.com/Dad Talk Today, and other ways you can support our channel. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time.